Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another stream. Hope you're all doing well tonight. Hope everything's good for you. And hope you're having a wonderful week. Now, on this Wednesday, I gotta say, I'm really excited. The new patch dropped, and I played a couple games earlier, and, well, I accidentally hit Diamond. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, pretty simple, honestly. From when we've last played, we ended the night off with a really nice first place game with Kayle. I then stuttered around 6th, 3rd, or 6th place, and then 3rd place this morning, trying out the new buffs to Abomination. They were fun, 4 Spellweavers, pretty great. But then something weird happened. I tried to play Riven as a carry with Dawnbringer Legionaire. Didn't really work. I then proceeded to get early Draconic and go for 3-star set to a 4th place finish. Not bad. Got early Draconic again. Managed this time with much better items on set to snag a 1st place. And then the game gave me an early drop of a Lee Sin and a Pantheon, starting me off on Skirmishers, which, although they're nerfed, you get them early enough, they still hit well. And the turn after I leveled up to level 7, I hit Raptors, which gave me a Skirmishers emblem. And then I also found a Jax, Mordekaiser, and a 1% Viego at the same time. I think that was the most comfortable 1st place I've had all set. And it was disgusting. And from 0 LP, these 3 games absolutely catapulted me up into Diamond at exactly 1 LP. I don't expect to stay here for long unless we get some good climbing in tonight. Because I tried to go for Katarina with Assassins. It was not the sauce. I then tried to go for a Kayle game just to see how she was. Never even found her. With that being said, I think tonight's going to be a fun night. I'm feeling pretty good about it. Really am. So let's jump right into it. Big things to note about this patch. Monstrosity is better. You managed to get all 4 monstrosities, or 5 with the spatula, you're in for a real treat. It got buffed. It's looking pretty good, honestly. Forgotten got nerfed at Forgotten 9. So it's not as easy to just rush 9 and have a very solid comp. Night damage got reduced at 6 nights. So hopefully Kayle will be less of a problem if she decides to go for 6 nights in physical damage lobbies. But I think it's going to be a bit more of a split lobby because Skirmishers got changed to percent max health shields instead of flat, making them weaker at 1 stars, but about the same at 2 and stronger at 3. And Spellweavers got to revert to their buff a couple patches ago, putting them back down to 50 ability power and +5 instead of the 60 and +6 that we're used to now. Or that we were used to previous. As far as notable champions that got changed, Trundle's ability power ratio on his spell got halved, meaning that every point of ability power you give him, only half of it's going to apply to the spell. So what I mean by that is his base spell ends up stealing, I think it's like 25, 30, 35 or 30, 35, 40% stats. And now it's still going to do that as a base steal, but you're not going to be able to throw a death cap on him and watch him instantly delete enemies without fully itemizing him for AP. And even then, I'm still not sure if he'll be strong enough in that regard. Clearly they didn't want to make him into a carry. On top of that, Riven got a huge buff so that now she has a bunch more attack damage when you get her to 3 stars, so she could actually be viable as a Legionaire, maybe Dawnbringer build as a physical damage frontline carry. But I think she'll fall into the same issues that we had in previous sets with, for example, Warlords and Zhao, who just did not have the ability to get to targets, and with that was not really able to carry. We'll have to see what we end up with and how we can go. It's looking like a decent start. Potentially we could have a forgotten start on our hands. I also like the look of just getting some Brawlers in for some frontline. So we'll have to see what happens. Back to the patch notes. Draven got nerfed at 1 and 2 stars, buffed at 3. They really buffed 3 stars Draven's axe damage just to make sure that he can become the carry that we all want him to be. Now, what I'm actually going to do here for an early win streak is I'm just going to sell the spare units I got and level here, because this will give me a pretty good set of 3 traits and could make my early game really powerful if I end up getting lucky and getting some Draconic units. We also have a bunch of magic resist, which goes a really long way, because once Set gets a Bloodthirster, you're pretty well set with him. Jokes aside, oh, sorry, I love making puns. So they've also slightly nerfed Vel'Koz at 1 and 2 stars, nerfed Mordekaiser's mana by 10, so he shouldn't be casting as often, which is great. And they also nerfed Jax at 1 and 2 star. Just looking like they're trying to pull back the power on some of the different compositions that we have. So looking at the items that we have, I feel pretty confident in just throwing these items on Set for now. But I'm also going to buy this Yasuo because there is the option that I could go for a physical damage build like Legionnaires with a Draven carry. So the actual nerfs that Draven got were they lowered the attack damage multiplier for his axes at 1 and 2 stars, but only by 10 and 20%, which is a decent nerf, but they're still already quite high. Seeing as we're level 4 with a 2-starred unit, we should have no problem with winning this round, but we are against some of the most durable frontline units in Warwick and Gragas for early game. I don't think we'll have a problem just because we've committed our items as well as leveled up aggressively here. And we hope to just start an early win streak. We also get really lucky here, and I think I'm just going to immediately play the 4 Brawlers. I'm not sure it's better than the 2 Brawlers plus the 2-star, but I'm fairly confident that the 4 Brawlers will be probably the strongest opener that we have. I think I'll do something like this, where I'll level up, get the 4 Brawlers in, and also have Lysandra just to try to assure as much as possible that we can start to get a win streak here. So from here on out, we have a great front line, very durable thanks to basically free Warmogs from the trait. We just need to start getting some damage to back it up. And for that, I do think that Set needs some kind of either a crit glove to make a Hand of Justice or a sword to try to work towards an Infinity Edge in the future. But since we are currently leading the lobby, we'll probably end up with a defensive item. We'll have to see what happens on the carousel here. I wasn't totally sure what to grab on the carousel there, so I was fine with getting the Nunu, as we already have one. Could make us a 2-star, and getting a Zizirot on the Nunu is not bad at all. We also find ourselves with a Draven, so quite interesting that we have both a Draven and an Ashe here. If we're able to find Udyr or Zyra, I'd love to just throw in Draconic, and that will be our build. We have good items for Set to carry, and at this point, all we're really looking for is a bit more power on our team. Now, it's true that we do have a Draven on bench that could definitely give us that boost, and the reason why I kept Draven on bench was in case we wanted to go Legionnaires in the event that we don't find the Draconic, because we do already have a Bloodthirster and another magic resist item, and the potential for a Hand of Justice that can all be very powerful on a carry like Draven or Set. The only issue with hitting Draconic late is that when we do end up hitting those Draconic, they're going to start spawning eggs so much later, and you're losing so much value, it makes you roll much more gold. Here we have the option that we could just buy the other 3 Dawnbringers and go for Dawnbringer, but in the event we were going to go Dawnbringer Legionnaire, we'd want a Riven to carry, and without having a Riven early and finding a 2% Draven, I'd feel much more confident just leaving our game plan flexible for now. I'm also going to sell the Yasuo to get above 10 gold, just because I want to make sure we don't completely ruin our economy going into stage 5. Otherwise, unless we really quickly hit Draconic, we will fall too far behind to be able to catch up. Now this person's running a Nautilus with items that would better be served for a LeBlanc, just because they haven't managed to find their last assassin that would also give them 3 Coven. So we're glad we were able to face them before they power spiked and give us a full win streak going into the Krugs here. We do find ourselves Udyr, as well as a 2% Ivern. Now, the Ivern's something I like to splash in at level 8. Once we find our 3 stars, and once we try to find a Volibear, try to give us 2 Revenant. Finding him now at a 2% is great, but I'm not actually going to look to play him, as after these Krugs, I'm going to level up to 6 and make sure we put in Ashe and Udyr to start getting our Draconic going to make eggs. Super unfortunate for our opponent there that they weren't able to clear the Krugs. They may have missed out on an item component that could really put them behind in the game. We're glad we found a sword as a casual pickup here, and what we're going to end up looking for now is a way to combine that sword into a damage item for Set. Ideally, we're going to be looking to make something like Infinity Edge. If we can't get that, we're happy to make something like Hand of Justice and a second Bloodthirster potentially. I don't believe Bloodthirster is unique. No, it's not. And it could make for some crazy game plans here. We'll just have to see what ends up happening. As it stands currently, I don't believe that we'll have a problem with the Nidalee, just because of the bite from Nunu. We find ourselves in a bit of an interesting position. We could actually look to take the recurve bow just to make a giant slayer, but I do think the stronger play is to grab the chain vest, because it could make any of a guardian angel, it could potentially make a frozen heart. Any of those could be really, really useful for our team. And thankfully, we're also starting to generate eggs, so we're in a pretty good position here. What I may look to do, however, is I may look to sell this Draven now that we did find Draconic. Because we'll be switching Udyr out for Zyra when we find her, because that'll be the stronger of the Draconic units, and we're not going to look to go to 5. 5 Draconic, because we don't need the golden eggs, we just want to get 3 stars on some of our core units. If we win this round, I think we sell the Draven. And if we lose this round, I think we just buy the spare Draven. As it's possible we could get a 2-star Draven, which is a powerful enough unit on his own to just throw in at level 6. Unfortunately, it's looking like we are going to lose this round just because our set got stuck on the Leona, so we buy the spare Draven. So it's looking like we got a nice sized dragon egg over here. When it hatches, it'll hopefully turn into something nice for us. Now, just because we're not going to break 40 gold, even if we sold the Draven, we'd be over 40 gold, I wanted to roll to see if we could power up any of our units, because we are looking a little bit weak in terms of our composition here. And going into Carousel, I'd really like to grab a crit glove to see if I could turn that into potential damage item for Set, as we want him to be our main frontline damage dealer and be able to heal for significant amounts. I will have to check afterwards for Ashe. To see how much her spell mana is and what the power increase would be towards 3, because it's possible we could turn these items into a Spear of Shojin for her. Yeah, so of course, since we're last on the carousel, we'll take whatever we can get here. But if we're able to get the magic resistance, or if we're able to get the shadow crit glove, we're pretty happy with either. So since we have the option of both here, I am going to opt for the magic resistance, just because I can use it with Set to make either of a... Oh goodness, my game's just totally glitching out here. That's a bit of an unfortunate bug for overtime. We can make either of a Risk Thirster or potentially just a Refracted Dragon's Claw, both of which are really powerful, but I think the Refracted Dragon Claw is probably the best option for Set in this position. I'm also just going to throw the spare BF sword on him for now, because we can still make the Frozen Heart, and I do want Set to have some more damage if he's going to end up being our frontline Drain Tank. Now, when I say Drain Tank, I'm talking about the type of unit that's going to stay alive in the front line for a long period of time, and should be able to just whittle down the opponents while our backline units can put in some good work. Now that we'll start having some dragon eggs hatching, we'll be looking to do some slow rolling on level 6, as they've upped the odds to 40% for finding a 2 cost here. So unfortunately we're sitting on a good amount of pairs. I mean, it's fortunate that we have the units in the first place, but it's unfortunate in the fact that we would much rather just have the upgrades ourselves. I am going to play a little bit greedier with Set's third item here, in that I could look to go for something like a Guardian Angel, but I do feel the strongest thing for Set is just to find ways to keep him alive, and having the magic resistance and the immunity to critical hits will go a long way in keeping him longer lasting. So I do want to just get some pure damage options on him, either an Infinity Edge or a Death's Dance, or something of that sort. Now you might wonder the reason why I'm buying up all of the Brawlers anyway. Since we'll be doing some slow rolling as we play, we want to make sure we can get as many 3 stars as possible, as the jump at 3 stars, especially for our 3 cost like Nunu, is extremely powerful. Perfect, so what we can actually do here is we can just put Zyra in over Udyr, and we can end up selling him to get us above our 50 gold breakpoint. What we can also do is we can look to put a blue buff on somebody. I'm not exactly sure who would utilize it the best, but I may actually just end up itemizing Nunu here to try to get as many bites off as possible, since we are looking to potentially 3-star him, and he'll be dealing a large amount of true damage. On 4-2, we're going to be looking for an item that we can put on Set to be able to finish off with that sword into a damage threat option. And we see our opponent here is actually looking to go a similar build to us. So the only reason why I don't want to grab the Caustic Deathblade is because there's minus maximum health. We could just look to grab an extra Bloodthirster here because they do stack, and it will make Set into a very durable frontliner. Or a Recurve Bow is another option, because we do know there are many compositions with quite durable frontlines. So we're actually just going to take the Recurve Bow here. What that also means is we can just put the spare health on Nunu to make him even tankier, and hope that we can find either another health for Warmogs, or worst case we can apply just the Sunfire Cape. We also want to be mindful of our time at level 6, so we'll start doing some slow rolls to potentially find ourselves our set. Or our pair for either Gragas or Warwick. Whoever doesn't end up getting to 2 stars there, we'll look to take out with Volibear, but we're only going to be looking to level once we end up finding a 3-star set. Thankfully, our Dragon Eggs should give us a little bit more leniency in being able to find those in time. As you can see right now, the actual leader of our comp is Nunu in terms of damage here. Perfect, so we get lucky and we end up finding both of the upgrades that we were looking for in Warwick and Gragas. We're not going to look to 3-star either of these units because we will be taking one of them out. Ideally, we end up taking out Warwick because Gragas just buys so much time with % damage reduction that he'll be useful in any situation. What we do want to look for when we go to Carousel is either a health for Nunu or an item that we can pair with the item that we can pair with the armor to potentially make our team stronger here. So there's a health on a Vel'Koz, unlikely that we'll end up getting it. The other option we could look to go for here, which is extremely unlikely, would be the Spatula, because then we could have another Dawnbringer that could just let Nunu get some passive healing. We could look to grab the Shadow ability power. And I think that's what we'll end up doing, because we could make a locket of the Silver Lunari. And what that locket will do, as you'll see, is it gives 70 bonus armor and magic resistance. And even though they gain 5 less mana per attack, that's totally fine because we're looking at our frontline tanks here. So making them much more durable will prove extremely useful for our team. So really unfortunate once again that we haven't quite been able to hit the sets that we're looking for. We will eventually find them. I mean, that's just the nature of our playstyle here, is that we're fine to stay at level 6, and then as we look to go to level 7 and 8, we can potentially add another ranger, something like a kindred. And then as we look to go to level 8, we want to swap out Warwick with Volibear and look to add something like Ivern. But unfortunately, without getting the 3-star set, you'll really notice that his damage just is not up to snuff by comparison. So unfortunate that we had to sell the spare Ashe and Zyra there, but since we are going to be looking to aggressively level as soon as we find the set, and we'll have the chances of finding the Ashe and the Zyra as we continue to get more eggs and as the game goes on, we want to make sure we power spike at a good time. As you can see, it's pretty unfortunate, but we're not quite strong enough to be able to take down these teams as we stand currently. With these eggs hatching, there's a decent chance that we find a set here. And we do. Great, we find a set to spare. So with that, we'll just level and we'll throw in the Varus so that we have an extra ranger. But we're not going to be playing either of these units here. And level 7 is where I would usually slow roll to try to find things like the Nunu, try to find things like Ashe and Zyra. But since we're starting to decline rapidly in our health here, I'm just going to start looking to put some points into leveling. I may do a bit of rolling to stabilize, but I don't think I'll need much. I'm not sure who's stronger here between Varus and Aphelios, but I think the answer is actually Varus, just because he's going to apply a team-wide buff that should go a little bit further in making our frontliners deal some more damage. So we'll have to see how our set does now. Yeah, as you can see on the crit there, our set ended up doing 1600 damage to their frontline Nunu. So even though it's not a perfect item, I do think that putting the Giant Slayer on set is a great option. So for now, since we're not really in threat of losing much, and even if we do, we have a good ways that we can fall before we're in real danger, we're just looking to get our Nunu as powered up as he can be, and hopefully we can hit Nunu 3 at around 5-5 and look to get an item for him, either a Gunblade or some sort of a health increase item on the carousel. As you can see, it's really unfortunate that Nidalee just kept dodging so much, but thankfully we've itemized our set for magic resistance, so we should be able to come out of this with a win here. Perfect. Just so we can make sure we hit level 8 as the game goes on, I am going to look to put some money towards getting close to level 8, probably a bit more money towards stage 5-5, so that we can hit level 8 once we find either 3-star Ash through eggs, or at least another 3-star with Nunu. At level 8, we are going to start looking for something like Ivern to put in, and we'll swap out Warwick with Volibear. Yeah, and as you can see, the set's doing a good amount of work for AoE damage on his entire team. Fortunately, that Varus is not a Kayle, otherwise we'd be in a much worse position. But thankfully, our sets managed to drain tank, as we can see by the 4,500 healing, and just stay alive through the entirety of the opponent's rain of arrows. So there is a Shadow Gunblade here which can heal other units but not Nunu himself. There is a Nunu with a Frozen Heart, which may actually be the item I go for if it doesn't get taken. Yeah, since that gets taken, we're gonna look to go for something... Realistically, I think the Shadow Gunblade will be fine. Because what we can do is that's going to let others heal for 60% of the damage dealt. And what that also means is I can put that Kindred in over the Varus. Since we are only missing an Ash, I am going to do a roll. And we're able to find our upgrade, so we now have a 3-star Ash. Great power up. With that, we can start looking to hit level 8 at a decent time. I know Kindred's not the ideal holder of the Gunblade, but I do think having Kindred in will be stronger than having the 2-starred Varus. Unfortunately, it's looking like our Ash is really just getting attacked from all sides there. And we do manage to take a loss, so I'm not sure if Varus would be better than if Varus would be better. But what we can do is we can look to put the Gunblade onto either Ash or Zyra. Ash's arrow is going to end up dealing about 700 damage, so it'll give a good amount of healing. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be a great item on Nunu, but I could be completely wrong. Either way, I do think that this will be the stronger composition for now. Now, it's not looking very likely for us to hit a 3-star Zyra in this game, but we can't completely remove that as a possibility, just because we are going to continue to get Draconic eggs, and for every time we get a decently sized egg, it's possible it could be either Zyra or Ash. If it's Ash, it's just an extra 3 gold for us, which is great. If it ends up being a Zyra, then we're very happy, as that's going to be something we'll be working towards. So there's just a bit of a just hit moment where we find both the Volibear and the Ivern, which is the exact two units that we would want to put in here at level 8 for our composition. Sorry that I missed a Zyra in the shop there. I was too concentrated on finding basically everything we were looking for. So what we're going to look to do from here is we're going to look to do a roll down of all of our gold. And if we end up getting a 3-star Zyra, yeah, unfortunately we're one off from the 3-star Zyra, but what I will look to do is if we get 3-star Zyra, since she's going to be dealing damage through so many enemies potentially, I'll look to swap corners with her and Ashe. And then what I can do is I can give her the Gunblade to be able to just power up our team significantly in terms of healing. Unfortunately, as we are versing a Kayle player, we're going to be taking a bit of a loss here. And there we go. We find the Zyra, and we put the Gunblade on her. Unfortunately, it won't be healing her, but we have so many other units that it can heal that we're feeling pretty good about our options. Just hedging our bets on who we're going to verse, I am actually going to leave the composition something like this, because there's a 50-50 chance we'll verse someone with a team on this side of the board. And we do. We end up going against our opponent with the 3-star near perfect items LeBlanc. Now, I am going to be looking at the graphs here just to see the amount of healing that Zyra's putting out. I don't think it's very much, since it's only 60% of the damage dealt. But I do think that it was better than nothing. Thankfully, we managed to hit top 4, so we're happy with any place we finish. Unfortunately, it's looking like it will be a 4th place finish. What I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to swap the Nunus and sell the one that I had so that I can get the blue buff on our Zyra. I don't know if it'll make much of a difference, but I know that it should help us here. That'll also let me put the Zizirot on our Volibear, and then just put the spare belt on our Nunu. So unfortunately we're versing the Kayle player here, and the Kayle player is the person who we would have to beat to stay in the game. So it's looking very likely that we're just going to end up in a 4th place finish, which is a-okay considering we took too long to get the Draconic going for our composition. You can see, however, that we still pushed the composition, we still forced it, and we did end up placing top 4 regardless of our late start for finding the units that we needed. And with that, we find ourselves at the end of our first game of the night. Just want to take a second and think on what we could have done a little bit better in that game. I think a bit more positioning with the Shroud would have been good. I think moving the Zyra across to split our odds would have been powerful. At the end of the day, we get our top 4, and we're happy enough with that because we definitely had suboptimal items on units like our set as we look into the next game. Nice, so we're able to grab Lysandra with a sword. So, let's see where we end up with tonight's second game. So here we just look to buy Leonas, try to get our pairs going, hope that we can end up with a early 2-star unit. As you saw from last game how much, I guess how powerful they really were. And letting us preserve health so long that we were able to finish top 4. Now the reason why I sell the Kennen there to pick up the extra Lysandra and Vladimir is just because that'll give me 2 renewers to put in, and it gives me a bit higher likelihood that I can find a pair. Now, the other thing that I would love to do here is I may look to just buy this Callista, because I do think Abomination is now powerful enough that it can be a good early game option and even transition into the later game if we end up going for 4 Abomination. And what we can do with Abomination is we can actually play Spellweaver. The items that we have though are pointing potentially to a Kayle game. Now, I don't love forcing Kayle personally. I do think it's powerful, I do think it has its place in the meta, I do think it can work. But it's not something that I prefer to do. Because with these items we could make a Ginzu's, which means we'd already have a very powerful item for a Kayle. And we could also look to make a Guardian Angel, which is the main survival tool for Kayle. And the third item's flex between Hand of Justice, Shadow Hand of Justice, a Gunblade. Any of those really just increase her survivability to let her start shredding out damage after the 20-second mark, where she'll just obliterate any teams left standing. But I'm thankful that we found the gold on stage 1-3, or 1-2 I guess, because that lets us be able to get the other renewer and get an early win streak going. In the event that we're going to play Abomination, I do think the belt will be stronger. In the event we're going to play Kayle, you do not want to get a Shadow Guardian Angel because it lowers her attack speed by 50%, and all she wants is attack speed to start spitting out true damage. What I will do, however, is take this Shadow Vest, because if we get a Spatula, that can become a Cavalier emblem. And I don't know if you've seen it, but Cavalier brand with Cavalier Abomination is absolutely hilarious. What I am going to do here is I'm just going to level, and I'm going to end up throwing in the brand. Because that'll give us better odds of potentially finding ourselves Nunu. If we win, I'll end up buying the extra Ziggs as a third Spellweaver. If not, the 2 Spellweaver will be fine for now, and I'm sure we could find Ziggs on another round. From here, we kind of just want to lose. I mean, if we get a couple hard losses, we're actually pretty happy. Just because that gives us a good chance of a good pick on the carousel, and if there is a spatula, we can go Cavalier, or if we find a Shadow Crit Glove, we can go for Abomination. Both of those are very powerful options. As I said, we'll have time to pick up Ziggs later. Later is now, so we're able to grab ourselves Ziggs. Now, I'm not sure if without Nunu our composition would be strong enough to just throw in Callista and Victor. I don't believe so. And since we're trying to lose, we do not mind having a bit of a broken composition at the moment and still deciding what we want to do. But I think having our options open, being able to go for Abomination, definitely having a Gunblade for Spellweavers, all very powerful options. And being able to possibly get a Cavalier spat. Reroll Cavaliers have grown in power as a potential carry threat in the game because they just end up with 4 Cavaliers getting 90%. I don't believe it was nerfed. I still believe it's 90% damage reduction. I'll have to double check in the patch notes. Yeah, so there is a spatula on Carousel. I don't think we'll be able to get it since we're second out, but in the event we do, this is going to be a crazy game. Yeah, so without getting the spatula, we're going to look to grab the tier to make blue buff for Brand, as he will be our main carry. Unfortunately, I don't think there's going to be another spatula throughout the game here, so we feel a little bit bad about that. But realistically speaking, spatulas aren't something to rely on when you want to play a game of TFT. The reason why I'm keeping the Gragas is because I want to make sure that we get to Brawler as a frontline option if we do end up finding the Nunu at a good pace. And we can just throw the spare tier on Brand here. Because what's going to happen is Brand has 20 mana, so if we do find the other tier, we're very happy to just make a blue buff on him, because blue buff plus Gunblade will be good enough on Brand as is for a backline threat, and we'll be looking to stay level 6 for a while, ideally running our three Abomination, plus either 4 Forgotten, if we find that we can get away with it, with keeping Brand safe, or we can just run, sorry, not 4 Forgotten, apologies, 4 Spellweaver, or we can potentially run just 2 Spellweaver and splash in additional units like a Brawler, and potentially even a Legionaire. So now that we have all of these units at 2 stars, I do think it's time to level up and just put them all in, as they should be more powerful than the units we ended up just running without synergies previously. I also feel confident in committing the Gunblade and just putting that on Brand. Yeah, as you can see, even at 1 star, the damage over time that Brand puts out, along with the magic resistant shred, is quite powerful. And what we'll also look to do here is we're just going to look to buy Hecarim, because between Hecarim, Victor, and Warwick, we can have a Spellweaver, we can have a Brawler, or sorry, yeah, we can have a Brawler, and we can have a Cavalier. And eventually Warwick will be replaced by Rise, who will be our Abomination unit. But having 3 Forgotten plus Cavaliers can make for a very, very strong mid-game power spike. Unfortunately, we don't end up finding the tier there. But we do end up finding the 4th Spellweaver. So we are in an interesting position now that we could look to put all 4 Spellweavers in, but I don't believe that that will be strong enough. We would like to find a Warwick to replace Leona with, and then if we did that, we could put Hecarim in for 3 Forgotten, and feel pretty confident about just putting the Shadow Vest on him, because if we do end up making the Cavalier Spatula, that will pop right off. Unfortunately, I don't believe you can get spatulas in the armory, so what we're just going to look to do here is we're just going to look to get a tier if possible. Now, as we take that loss, I'm debating selling these Zigs to get 20 gold. And I think it's worth it because we have other units we'd want to put in over 4 Spellweavers in the immediate. Now, here we don't end up finding the tier that we're looking for, but we do end up finding an ability power, which can end up being a powerful option with the Crit Glove if we don't end up finding a spatula to just give Brand 3 carry items. Now, we don't want to fall too far behind on getting to level 6, but we want to make sure that we are trying to get our economy up as much as possible. So in the event that we win, we sell the Victor. In the event that we lose, I think we can sell the Zyra comfortably because as she is a 3 cost unit, the chances of finding her will only improve. I'm not sure if the correct play is to buy the set or to sell the Zyra. I do feel that it would be smarter to sell the Zyra just to get to 40 gold. That being said, our opponent is 5 Skirmishers at level 6. I'm not exactly sure. Oh, wow. Apologies, I guess they did manage to hit 6 Skirmisher. Oh, they have a Force of Nature sitting on the side. That's why they were more powerful than they appeared. So here we want to make sure we grab the tier because getting blue buff on Brand is our first and major priority. For now, we can look to keep the 3rd item slot open. We could look to keep the Jeweled Gauntlet as an option, but not directly apply it. And what we could do instead is we could look to start giving Hecarim the Shadow Armor to hold. In the hopes that we end up finding something valuable. This is the reason why I held on to the other Victor. We're going to be doing a reroll comp. We're realistically going to be at level 6 for a long time, potentially not even getting past level 7. So it's good to keep units that you may want to end up turning into a carry. Now that we found the Nunu, I feel much more confident in just throwing in Abomination here. I don't believe Callista to be the most important unit in the composition. Nor a unit that's worth going for 3 stars, as we're just going to be looking to find our carry potential in our other units. I also don't think we're going to be going for Brawlers, so I'll just sell the spare Gragas to try to make economy here. What we're going to do after this is we're going to level up to level 6. And this game is just telling me to buy whatever I see. So we end up finding ourselves in a very interesting position here. With an early 3-star Victor, knowing that 3-star Victor is actually quite powerful with ability power, I'm just going to give him the Jeweled Gauntlet. And if we don't end up getting the Cavalier Spatula, that's still fine, because this Shadow Vest can turn into a... I don't know why it's not listed. Turn into a Gargoyle Stone Plate of Immortality. Just give Hecarim even more healing as a frontline threat. Perfect, so we do end up getting our Spatula, which means we'll have a much more fun game than I was thinking we would end up having. So we end up getting the Cavalier emblem, and we put that on our brand. We won't need Warwick later, as we'll be looking for Ryze to replace Callista. And now our game plan has changed, where we are looking for Cavaliers. What I think we want to do here is we want to try and make either Victor more powerful by grabbing the tier, or make Hecarim into a viable frontline tank for the Shadow Vest, and I think that's what we're going to end up doing, because we're going to be looking to roll for Hecarims. Now, I'm not sure what the right play would be here between taking out Abomination and just putting in our other 2 Cavaliers, or leaving Abomination in. I do think that putting in 2 Cavalier will drastically reduce the amount of damage taken and make ourselves feel much more confident. as we look to 3-star units and potentially find a rel. So I think that's what we'll end up doing. Yeah, this is such an interesting game for decisions just because we're finding Sejuanis, we're finding Abomination. Really, we're finding a lot of the units that we want to end up running in our composition. We're just not sure what to do with all of it. I do think that we want to take this bow and just throw it on Callista for now. I'm not sure what it will end up becoming. But I do think we need to make a decision after Carousel here if we're going to stay with Abomination or if we're going to swap out into pure Cavaliers. And I think we're going to swap out into Cavaliers. So for that, what I'll do is, no matter how much I have the 3 stars, or how happy I would be to have the 3-starred Callista, I may end up just selling her and taking Nunu out for now so we can get 4 Cavaliers. So I think that'll be the stronger front line. Ride 'em Cavalier is right. So we're only really missing 1 Sejuani for a 3-star Sejuani. Which is super interesting to me. Then we have, we're only missing 3 Hecarims. And what we would do from there, no matter how much we would love to find 3-star Brand, we may just look to go to level 7, as we could potentially find Rise to put in, to still, along with Nunu, to give us our... it's so difficult. It's so difficult. All right. So we do find ourselves the Sejuani, which is great because she's going to be extremely durable, or at least she should be extremely durable. We have Kled here just for the trait. Ideally, that would be swapped out with a Rel. We would want to swap out Warwick for Rise, and then at level 7 we would add Nunu back in to be able to get the Abomination. I'm not exactly sure if we'll be able to survive in the lobby. I don't actually think so, just realistically speaking, without a 3-star Brand, because the damage from Brand just goes from 900 to 1500, and the resist shred goes from 50 to 70%. So no matter how fun this is for Cavalier, it's looking like it'll probably end up being an 8th. I'm okay with that personally. Like, I'm just here to have a bit of fun tonight. But once again, we'll have to see what happens. For all we know, we get 2 more Hecarims right away, we find a couple Brand, and we're feeling really strong. Realistically speaking, I think we get gold off of these chickens. And I'm hopeful that we can find those Hecarims. There we go. We end up finding ourselves a 5% rel, much, much stronger than Kled in terms of our team composition. And I think Frozen Heart will be the best to put on our Sejuani, as she'll be jumping into the fray and surviving for long periods of time. We can end up using the Carousel as a way to find additional... That's what we're looking for! We can look for Carousel as a way to get an additional item for Victor. I'm not exactly sure what item would benefit him the most. Potentially a defensive item to keep him alive. Either a Gunblade so that he can heal, or maybe something like a Trap Claw or a Guardian Angel. So any defensive item would do. We could also go for something like a Locket, considering we're going for so many 3-star units that the Locket will actually give quite a big shield across our team. So as you can see, to me, it's extremely hilarious, but we're actually starting to win because Victor's putting out 10,000 damage with his skills. Unfortunately, in our roll there, we weren't quite able to find the Rise that we were looking for. We would have loved to have found Rise and just put him into the composition, as that would have been perfect to give us a option over Warwick. But we still feel that we need to level here because we still have a 30% chance, even though it's not quite 40%. We still have a decent chance to find 2 more brand, and we want to make sure we can stay alive. Having that spare unit in can potentially make the difference. It's unfortunate that we're not going to have the Abomination just to give Victor some more time, but as you can see in these fights, our 3-star Hecarim just isn't really dying because he's not even taking enough damage to start healing. Our Victor's shielding for 12,000 health. We're not going to look to play economy here. Oh, perfect. We're not going to look to play economy here just because we don't really need to. We find the Rise. We're super happy about it. I do think that composition still looks something like this for now. In the event that we do get a Locket specifically on the Carousel, it'll end up giving 400 shielding across all of our backline units if I put it on a 3-star. So I'd want to make sure I'll put it on someone who will go where Rise is currently sitting. I think that will end up being Hecarim. It could also end up being Sejuani, but from the way it's standing right now, we're looking like we should be able to come out with a win on these rounds, which not entirely surprising considering the number of 3-stars we have in our composition, but you can definitely hear the smile in my voice because this comp is just really coming together. So as far as items that we'd want to put on Victor, we want a defensive item, if possible. If we get the Shadow Bramble Vest, we may just win the game, however, because that makes it so our front line has so much armor. I do think the item I'm going to go for in the end is this Archangel Staff, because what Archangels does is every time the user casts their spell, they get increased ability power based on percentage of the mana for the spell they used. So what I can do with this is I can put this on Victor. He's going to get ability power equal to 40% of his max mana every time he casts. 40% of 70, he's going to be looking to get a bit of extra mana. Nothing crazy, but he's staying alive long enough that he'll keep throwing out shields, and with the extra ability power, those shields are going to just keep getting stronger. So we really hope to win this round, and we'll buy the brand if we do. If we don't, we may be knocked out. If we're not knocked out, then we're just going to look to buy ourselves brand by selling the Nunus. Because at this point, getting the Nunu 3 unless we just get really lucky for win streaking, is not super likely. Thankfully, as you can see, our Drain Tank in Hecarim is just staying alive for so long, and Victor's already up to 260 ability power. Unfortunately, it's looking like he's going to get chain stunned, so we may end up with a loss here, but it'll be very close. Perfect. So we spend all our money, we do end up getting the 3-star Brand, and as you will soon see, Brand will start dealing a large amount of magic damage to the enemies. He also has Cavalier. Excuse me, one second. Sorry about that. I was speaking so much, my throat just got super dry. He also has Cavalier, so he's constantly taking 80% reduced damage. So to me, it's kind of hilarious. Unfortunately, it looks like our Victor got picked off. Thankfully, now that we have a 3-star Brand, he's actually able, with blue buff and the Gunblade, to stay alive for a long time and start topping our damage chart while being extremely durable with the reduced damage that he takes. It really gives us multiple threats in the composition. I don't see ourselves going for 3-star Nunu. I do think that once we get the 2 stars on Rise, hopefully, and Rel, we're done with our comp. We're not looking to go to level 8 or 9. We're not. If we did look to go to level 8, it'd be a miracle, and we put in a second Mystic, just to get some magic resistance for our already extremely survivable team. Even still, we're happy with the way our game played out, and we'll take whatever rank we end up in. We're also going to throw this other Frozen Heart on our Hecarim, because he'll be charging him with Sejuani, and one of them should be staying alive for a long period of time. I'm not going to buy the Teemo, because I just don't want to die. So, apologies. Unfortunately, we don't find Rise or Rel, but... oh, Buddha Teemo, I'm so sorry. But as you can see, our composition is surprisingly powerful considering that we're level 7 and it's 6-1, so most people are level 8, and there are a few teams that are level 9. Just because of the sheer number of 3-starred units on our composition, we're able to beat players who've hit level 9. Oh, goodness gracious. I mean, fingers crossed that we're going to end up with top 4 on the night. I'm very hopeful. We'll have to see. I mean, of course it'll come down to this game. I think if we get matched up against this player, they've also accrued a large amount of 3 stars, but thankfully we didn't fight the real of them. They fight our shadow. As far as our real match goes, we're versing the person who has the extremely powerful Varus. So we'll have to see how we do here. I am hopeful that we'll be living for a long time now that we have a 3-star Brand who's just constantly healing. And since he's throwing his spell out to everybody, it is buying us a good amount of time. And it looks like we're going to come out with the win on the round and make top 4, potentially top 2, as the person who rolled for Assassins lost to our ghost. Sorry if you can hear the smile in my voice, but I'm happy with how this zany one in a blue moon composition has come together to pull off potentially a higher than 4th place finish. Well, thank you for joining me for tonight. I'm really glad you were able to see the hilarity that is this composition. This is the only other player that we've had extreme problems with, and the big part of that was due to the 3-star set that you see our opponent has. Thankfully, however, they haven't started targeting our Victor yet, so he's providing a good amount of shielding for our team. But as the fight goes on, if we're not able to kill their Ashe in the backline, we are going to end up losing. And so we do. And we end up in a very close 4th place finish. Yeah, unfortunately, that was the one opponent that we knew we'd have trouble with. But still a great game. We're still always happy with the way that game went, because realistically speaking, they had level 9 with 5 Draconic. Or sorry, they drop it down to 3. But they had 4 Brawler frontline with a 3-star set and a 3-star Ashe. Oh, we really played the odds on that game, and we came up aces. Oh boy, oh boy. Well, thanks for joining Nut tonight. I really hope you had a good chuckle on how that game went, because I know I did. Oh goodness. For the previous game of the night, just so you know what happened, we ended up getting 4th place with the build that our opponent was using, but we ended up stopping at level 8 and rolling because we found ourselves a 3-star set, a 3-star Zyra, and a 3-star Ashe. So we ended up in a real position of power, and unfortunately we didn't have great items for our set, but we were still able to make a top 4 finish out of it, which we are always happy about. With that, I'm going to give you the option to choose my little legend for the next game. I know you're partial to Chonk, so I'm expecting it, but I'm open to whatever you'd like. I'll do a bit of scrolling and you just let me know what name you want me to stop on or go back to. Pink Dango. Yes, it is. We got Bubblegum Dango. So we'll play Bubblegum Dango. Now, to go with Bubblegum Dango, I unfortunately don't have the fireworks, because I'm sure the pink firework would actually be great to go with it. So I think I'm just going to end up going with the Burn Bright with a giant laser coming out of a star. And we just unlocked the Court of Chaos, so why not? Our games tonight have been hilariously chaotic. Let's roll with it. Oh goodness gracious. The things we get up to on this stream. Hopefully it's as entertaining for you as it is for me. Oh boy. All right, that was such a fast load time. My screen didn't even have the chance to change. So we're just gonna have to get right into it and hope it catches up. Also, thank you for the compliment. I'm glad you really enjoy the stream. gotta say, I'm a real fan of these boards that they've put out this season. Oh boy. Oh, so do I. I like the Trident. I also enjoy the cool colors, the cooler theme with the purple and the grays. So, we have a Gragas here, and I know there are 3 veins in the shop, so I could buy them. I kind of feel like it's a trap not buying them, but I also know that going for those may not be the smartest play, just because Vayne herself is quite weak without items, and Forgotten's just gotten nerfed, so I'm gonna pass on it. Get a bit of teeth clenching there. What I'm really hopeful that I can do this game with an early Bloodthirster is I'm hoping to go for Set and the Draconic route. It's totally possible we won't get it, but I've been playing it all day and it seems easy enough to be able to get and run. So I'm very hopeful that it will come up. The other option we can do with the Bloodthirster is we could look to go Nightbringers, and seeing as we already have 2 3-cost Nightbringers, we could make a Aphelios our main carry and itemize 6 Nightbringer and probably end up with Taric and Ashe for a second Ranger and Verdant, as well as a Knight with Darius. In the interim, however, I think we want to try to find an item holder. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy the Vayne in the shop. I'm going to buy the Kha'Zix because I know at level 4, being able to run the 2 Dawnbringer will be a very powerful frontline. I also know that a 2-star Aatrox with a Bloodthirster is a surprisingly strong frontline tank, just because he already heals on his spell, and it also gives lifesteal from the spell, and Bloodthirster lifesteal is applied on the spell and his additional auto attacks. So with that in mind, we're going to look to go Aphelios tonight, and we want to make sure we get as much damage as possible for him. And in that regard, I think I'm going to grab the Shadow Rod, because we know we already have a Bloodthirster. So what I can do just for now is I can look to sell these, go to level 4, put that in, get the Bloodthirster out, and start stacking items like this. So we have ourselves with 3 redeemed, 2 ranger, and start working on Aphelios items while keeping rangers. We're not going to sell these Nightbringers because we know we want them in our composition. We are leveled up, which should make it so when we lose by less. I don't think we'll win just because we're versing Hellions and we don't really have a good composition in terms of dealing area of effect damage. Yeah, we're definitely going to be coming out with a loss here. As soon as Ziggs throws his next bomb, yep, come with a loss, and that's okay. We're not really looking to win streak as we go. What we want to do is we want to try to play the composition as best as we can and start getting our economy up as soon as possible, because we know we're going to be looking to get to level 8, and at level 8 is where we're going to need to spend all of our money rolling down to find 2-star Aphelios. Along the way, we need to find at least 1 Aphelios, just so we can, you know, have him as our main ranger, have him for damage. If we don't find an Aphelios by, depending level 7 on where we are for health, if we don't find Aphelios at a good pace, we will roll level 7 to try to find him and then work to get our economy back up, because that's how important he'll be to the composition. At level 8, the other unit that we could look to run, as she's very powerful, is Kindred. Kindred is a 5-cost unit, Ranger, and Mystic, of which we're going to have Mystic through Morgana, and Ranger through, well, Aphelios. Going into Carousel here, because we took the ability power, we want a bow. Because we want to make sure we can make a Ginsu's. Thankfully, there are 2 bows. Unfortunately, we're on 3rd Carousel pick, so we still may not end up with a bow. But we'll have to see here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk around in the hopes that the opponent thinks that I'm going for a different item and grab the bow. Because I find that when I walk directly towards items, my opponents tend to be a little bit rude and just snatch as soon as they can. So this way, we have a better chance of finding our item. That means I can make the Ginsu's immediately, and the damage that Ginsu's does for percent max health each time they attack is offset by the Bloodthirster, making this a very, very powerful combo. I could also look to grab LeBlanc for Coven, but I want to save as much gold as possible, and I know that I want to try to play Aphelios and Nightbringer specifically. The other option I can do if I don't want to go all the way into 6 Nightbringer is I could go 4 Nightbringers and 4 Rangers, and then that would still leave me with a spare slot. In terms of the Nightbringers I'd definitely run Morgana, I'd definitely run Darius and Aphelios, and I'd probably run Diana or Lee Sin. Thankfully I have Lee Sin right now. Either one would be useful. And then what I could do is I could look to just run Varus, Ashe, Aphelios, and Kindred. And then what I can do, since Mystic is now a 2-3-4 trait, where it used to be 2-4-6 as markers, is I could just run any spare Mystic unit, like this Lux, for example, and Mystic will stack to 3, giving me an additional 60 magic resist for the whole team. So depending on how the lobby goes, that's also a really good option. What I'm going to do here, even though it's a little bit weaker, is I am going to look to level and just throw in Morgana in the hopes that having her as a 3-cost frontliner will potentially offset the composition. And since I found the Lux for a redeemed Mystic, that gives me 2 Mystic off the bat while keeping redeemed, and I can get rid of this Aatrox. I'll probably end up getting rid of him by 3-1 or next round to make Econ, just because as it sits right now, I'm not going to make a breakpoint by selling him, and if I get him to 2 stars, he could be more powerful than the Leona, depending what else I find. Because I'm not really looking to play another Knight, but I know I'll need to get frontline eventually. Those are amazing pickups. Finding 3 Nightbringers, including a 2-starred Morgana. So because of that, we're feeling a lot better going into these Krugs. That also means that we could look to sell an Aatrox to get to 10 gold as needed. And we're hopeful that we can get some items to potentially help out Aphelios here as a carry. We end up with just a magic resist, but that's fine because we could turn that into a Quicksilver to make him a lot safer, or even a Runon's Hurricane or Runon's Untamed Hurricane to make him more powerful on the backline. The item that I would love to get as a 3rd item though would be either Infinity Edge or a Deathblade, just because I want to try and make sure that we have... How do I put this properly? I want to make sure that we have sufficient damage on Aphelios. So yes, we have a Bloodthirster, yes, we have a Ginsu's. They're both very powerful. I do think that Deathblade's pretty strong. I do know that Infinity Edge now works with his spell, and he gets healing from it with Bloodthirster, so both are really powerful. I remember reading earlier today, in fact, that someone was doing a stat check on Aphelios to see if he's more powerful with Infinity Edge or with Deathblade. I don't remember what exactly happened from that, so I am going to see if I can scroll on the side for a second to find it. What I am going to do is I'm going to grab the recurve bow, though. So, someone ended up doing, my apologies, they did Infinity Edge versus Deathblade on Riven. I'm not sure which is better on Aphelios then. I would have to say, realistically speaking, since he hits 4 units, he probably ends up just being better with, he just ends up being better overall with, I think that's better to keep redeemed. He'll end up being better with Deathblade just because he's going to hit 4 units and just get more procs on it. However, I'm not sure who ends up being the best carry in the composition if Aphelios doesn't kill the units with the Deathblade. So in fact, I may lean more towards Infinity Edge. Just because his spell can now crit, and Infinity Edge gives his spell 100% crit as well. This is hilarious. Unfortunately, we do take a loss there, but that sweet Varus on Varus action is nothing to be sad about. As I said, we're looking to level as aggressively as possible while saving our econ. I'm just thinking to myself, what would be the power spike of going to level 6? Going to level 6 puts us another Mystic, puts us a Nightbringer. I do think it's worth it. For now, I think we do want Redeemed just because the armor, magic resist, ability power are all valuable. The second that we find Aphelios, we can sell this Varus, feel good about it. But we do know on the carousel, the one thing we're really looking for is a sword. If we can't end up getting the sword, we definitely want to grab some crit. Seeing as this is the determining fight between 4th and 5th, looking like we're decidedly in 4th here. So we'll be on 2nd pick rotation. There's a crit, there's a sword. We're hopeful to grab either. We can also look to grab the Shadow Sword on the Diana, although it's not as powerful as just the regular sword for our composition, it will still work in a pinch. Since that was going towards me and the other 2 people who were undecided, I just made a beeline for it and it ended up working out great. This Diana is also really interesting for us because that gives us 4 Nightbringers, which means we can just look to change our composition now. I'm not particularly sure if it's stronger than what we currently have, as you can tell by the way I'm talking slowly through my thought process. But what I will end up doing is I will just do the transition and put in those units, sell the Leona to give Morgana some more health, and what I may end up doing here is selling the Lulu to get to 30 gold, knowing that the composition still feels pretty good. The only question on my mind is whether 4 or 6 Nightbringer is better, so let's look at the trait. Nightbringers will get a 30% larger shield and do 10% more damage once they drop below 50% health. For our composition in particular, that does mean that Aphelios will be surviving for longer, and since we don't have great items on Aphelios, it may be more worth it to get that as the power spike for our composition instead of getting for 4 Ranger. If that's the case, we're going to need to find ideally just a Vladimir or a Yasuo to keep with us on our bench as we look to find Aphelios and then go to 6 Nightbringer by selling Varus. We want to get our economy up as fast as possible because if we don't, we're not going to be able to find Aphelios and we'll run out of money and we'll run out of time. So I know we're going to be taking a couple of losses on these next few rounds, and that's okay because we are using our health as a resource here. So we get ourselves to 40 gold, making sure that on 4-1, we have the option to level to 7 with about 30 gold left, and drastically increase our odds of finding Aphelios. The only thing I'm torn on is if we want to buy the Morgana. I don't think this is a game we're going for 3-star Morgana. We don't have her itemized. I also know she was just buffed, but I think even with 3 stars, we want to make sure we're just going for Aphelios as our core unit. We may even be looking to 3-star Aphelios potentially, so we want to make sure that we have the gold for that. So unfortunately, we don't find the Aphelios on the level up and slight roll down. What we do find, however, is Mordekaiser. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put Warmogs on Morgana to make her extremely survivable. And that also leaves my spare items as potential options for backline units or Aphelios components or frontline units. And we'll have to see what we get here from the armory, knowing that we'll have one more carousel to potentially finish off a good item for our carry. We also see our opponent has an Aphelios, so we are slightly contested, but I don't think that really deters us here. The only thing that's killing us is our economy and the fact that we're down to such low gold without hitting Aphelios. Getting all these ability power is not a particularly great feeling, but it could be useful and hilarious. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the Shadow ability power, we're going to put it on Morgana, make an Ionic Dark Spark on her, and she may end up getting large amounts of ability power, potentially turning her into a backup carry. Our only issue at the moment is that we don't have a 2-star Varus or Aphelios. So unless we find either of those things, we're feeling very, very weak. Unfortunately, we also just happened to pick the lobby that multiple other people were going Rangers. So we have this person playing 4 Nightbringers with the Aphelios, this person playing 4 Rangers with the Aphelios, which we barely lost to. So it's going to be slightly contested in trying to find Aphelios. What I could actually look to do here, and I will do, is I'll grab the Forgotten units on my bench, and I could potentially pivot this into a Draven game because these items are just as good on Draven. So what I'll do is I will try to make this pivot the best that I can, knowing that it's still going to suck, and I apologize in advance. So what we're looking for here is just a Legionnaire. Once we find the Legionnaire, we're very happy to just fully commit to the change. But as you can see, we're running out of time and running out of health. And we're out of gold. So we want to find something we can do with that sword. If we can get a crit glove, we are feeling very, very secure. Unfortunately, the crit glove's on Heimerdinger, so it's not very likely. If we can't get the crit glove, there's a Death Blade potential with Syndra that we can aim for. Let's see what we can get. So we do manage to get the crit glove on Heimerdinger, giving us some much needed gold as well as the ability to make Shadow Infinity Edge for our Draven. We're going to look to have 4 Legionnaire, 3 Forgotten, and potentially splash in some Nightbringer and Mystic along with the Dragon Slayer by keeping Morgana, Mordekaiser, and Diana. So what we'll do here is something like this, where we'll also swap that in just for now. I don't need you, I don't need you, I don't need you, I do need you. I'll need to get to level 8. And if I can find another Morgana, I can actually just sell her and put her items on Mordekaiser, because those are decent items for Mordekaiser. As well, as you can see, our Draven is actually doing a decent amount of damage, just because the items we have for him are fairly strong. The only reason why we lost that there was because they had a 2-star Felios. Knowing that we're not going to die, no matter how much it hurts to just let our health drop, we have to wait. So what we have to do here is we have to wait, try and just bide our time, get above 50 gold. On stage 5-1, we level up to 8, we roll down the remaining gold, try to find specifically Viego to replace our Victor to give us 2 Assassin. We look to try to find either of another Legionnaire, which we would then put in Yasuo and the other Legionnaire and take out the Pantheon, or we would look to find a Trundle, in which case we do 4 Dragon Slayer. Very unfortunate on the timing of that polymorph, but it is what it is. What we're going to need to do as part of that roll down is we're going to want to make sure that we find another Morgana to sell the one we have and put those items on Mordekaiser so he can be a much more durable frontline threat and potentially even a frontline carry for us. We're also hopeful that we get an ability power rod or a crit glove off of the chickens here. Well, the raptors, but you know, they fall pretty quickly. In hopes that we can get a 3rd item for our Mordekaiser frontline. We end up with a belt. Not the worst thing. And I'm gonna have to be quiet here as I look to do our rolls. I'm not even sure if Darius is good here. Like, yes, I know he's a powerful unit. I do think that Forgotten is currently giving Draven an additional 36 attack damage. I don't know if that's actually making a difference. As you can see, we're still getting destroyed by the opponent's composition. But if we had a 2-star Draven, okay, as I say that, our Draven goes nuts. If we had a 2-star Draven, we'd be feeling much, much happier about how we are in our current position. But we don't. We do, however, have another Legionnaire, and seeing the stats for our damage, I do think that this is the strongest play. So there we were able to find the Viego, potentially work towards a 3-star Yasuo, find another Draven, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sell this spare Mordekaiser and buy that Rise. So now we're 1 off from a 2-star Rise, making us feel way, way more confident on our position in this current lobby. And showing what I would say, regardless of our position at the end of this game, to be a successful transition when you find that you're very, very heavily being, I guess the word is countered. Or at the very least, other people are going your composition, so you're very... I'm completely blanking on the word. Contested. That's the one. Even though I'm seeing a lot of Mordekaisers, and I know a 3-star Mordekaiser can carry, I don't know if I should be buying these. Personally, I think the answer is yes, even though I just sold a Mordekaiser previous. I think I sell this Yasuo, buy both of the Mordekaisers, and then continue my looking for Draven. Because if I am able to get a 3-star Mordekaiser, he has defensive items, he has an increase in ability power for Ionic Darkspark. Unfortunately, he will end up falling over time, but he will be an even stronger frontline tank. There's a Draven here. I don't care that it has Ironclad. I need the 2-star Draven. It is that difficult of a game for me here. Considering my Draven on the board already has 3 items, the Ironclad Spatula will pop off. Unfortunately, without dropping back down to 2 Legionnaires, I don't really see a way to get Ironclad in the composition. So I think it's just going to end up being a dead item on Carousel. But the 2-star Draven will help very, very much in eking out those wins where we've had close losses. Since we have a 2-star Rise, we don't need to work towards 3-star. And I'm going to end up putting the Ironclad Spatula on him just so we can try to get a bit more defenses. I do think that Kayle is going to be more powerful as a spare Legionnaire than Riven, because if they're not able to get to my backline, there is a sense of finality that comes with Kayle being able to ascend over time. I don't believe she'll be living in this lobby. I really don't. But we're doing all we can. It's looking like we may be ending the night on a 7th place finish, but I have my hopes that we'll be able to come away with something spectacular on the next couple of rounds. If I had to position the composition, I'd say it'd be something like this. We have a couple upgrades we can go for here. I know if we would have rolled, we would have been in a safer position. But as it stands right now, we were too late on time anyway. I do think with the low amount of health that we have left, going for a Mordekaiser at 3 stars is a very bad idea. I do think the extra 35% attack speed from Legionnaires is making the difference, though. So what we'll end up doing here is we'll look to sell these Mordekaisers, get to 20 gold, and since we still have a 1-star Viego, 1-star Kayle, 1-star Diana, and 1-star Morgana, we're going to be looking to do some rolling. If we were to have gone to level 9, which I don't think with our health we would have been able to, potentially if we would have gone Draven from the start, there would have been that option. But because we're not looking to go to level 9, I'm not as worried about finding a Darius to put in, because Darius does Armor Shred, and that would be the one thing that would drastically increase our Draven's damage. That would mean dropping the 2 Legionnaires, which I don't think is the right play. That's a lot of Kayles that we've seen. I'm just gonna call out that anomaly. We've accidentally managed to hit a 2-star Kayle. As far as the best holder on this Morellonomicon, I'm not sure if it's Rise or if it's Diana. But since Diana's at 1 star, I do think it's Rise. Normally I'd give it to Morgana, but without having a Guardian Angel on her, I don't feel like she's going to be able to get her cast off in time. Yeah, and as we see there, Rise was able to get his stun off onto 5 people, which really just buys so much time for our composition, and lets us survive long enough to make it to top 5. Even if we end up petering out in 5th place here, I still feel happy with what we accomplished. I also think it's very important to note that we have 6 Dravens. If we are able to continue living, as unlikely as that may seem, getting a 3-star Draven is a win condition, because they did buff him. It'll be 340% of his attack damage per axe, plus 800 bonus damage. That would be enough for us to hold out and win the game. So if we win here, which we have to in order to stay alive, I'll be buying this Draven. As you can see, it's very down to the wire. We're missing exactly 2 Dravens. And we've managed to make top 4. If we end up in 4th place, I'll be happy, considering we were very likely to go out in 7th. But thanks to decent positioning, being able to stabilize our composition, finding a 2-star Draven most importantly, and kind of high-rolling a 2-star Kayle, we've managed to buy enough time. If there's a Draven on the carousel, I don't care what item it has, I have to take it. I do think our run's going to end here though, as their composition is made to assault the backline, and they will instantly delete our Draven. Our only hope is that our opponent at 2 health is also about to go out, and we may end up with a 3rd place finish. It's looking like that's the case, and just like that, we go from being 7th place, almost 8th, to a 3rd place finish, being 2 Dravens off from potentially taking the entire game. Overall, I think that was a great game, a powerful way to show how to pivot and how to play to the best of your items when there are other players going for your composition. Specifically, the person who ended in 8th was one who was going directly the composition that we were. The person ending in 6th tried to do a similar pivot. And the person who ended up in 1st place was the composition we were hoping for with 4 Rangers. With that being said, I hope you were able to learn something. I hope you had fun watching the game. I hope that seeing that Draven throwing those axes and barely coming out with a close 3rd place finish to end the night was just as exhilarating for you as it was for me. With that, thank you for watching. Thanks for tuning in and for enjoying the hilarious spectacles that have been the TFT games of the evening. With that, I hope you have a great remainder of the night, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Take care.